Okay. Hello, my name is Tanisha Sharonfont. I am a National Sports Media Association intern from High Point University. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Rich Cimini, a longtime NFL reporter from ESPN New York. Rich has been covering the New York Jets for decades and is one of the most respected voices in New York sports media. Rich, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for saying those kind words, Tanisha. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. I love to start from the beginning a bit. I understand you graduated from Syracuse in 1985. What first sparked your interest in sports journalism?
It probably started way before that, even I think when I was in junior high school, I really loved to play sports. And you get to the realization when you realize you're not going to be like the center fielder for the New York Yankees, and you have to come to grips with that. And I liked writing and I liked sports, and I knew I couldn't make a career out of sports, but I could make a career out of sports writing. So I kind of put the two together, and that's how I got into this.
So, from what I'm hearing, is you played baseball?
Yeah, baseball was my sport. Yeah,
Okay.
that was my main sport. And I thought I was pretty good, but you realize when you see other people who are so much better, you're like, okay, this is not going to be I'm not going to be doing this for much longer.
Okay. So, were you surprised that you'd be covering the NFL today, or did you have other like career paths in mind?
I really didn't know what sport I was. I did a lot of college basketball early on. I did a lot of Major League Baseball, and I did some football. And I thought I'd be doing college basketball for a long time, but one guy on our staff, I worked at Newsday at a college on Long Island, and our football writer left to go to Sports Illustrated, and it created an opening. And so that's how I ended up doing football. And I never thought I would be doing it this long. I know I'm crazy for covering the Jets this long. But yeah, that's you just never know where your path will take you.
Okay, so it sounds like you like dibble dabbled in a little bit of everything coming up till now. So
Right.
looking back at your career so far, what is a moment where you would say like, okay, I've really made it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes I don't think I even have yet. So, and I've been doing this for a long time. There's so much competition out there, and especially now, and media is just growing. With so many websites and different platforms for people to get involved. So there's so many talented people. I guess when I started covering the NFL, I started off doing high schools at Newsday, and high schools, I was having a blast doing that. But then when you get to cover the NFL and you're rubbing elbows with guys you saw on TV, I think that's when it kind of dawns on you like, hey, this is big time. This was what I always wanted to do.
Okay, so what is the biggest learning curve when entering a large media organization like the ESPN or the NFL?
Yeah, well, luckily, I got to ESPN. I've been there for 15 years. And so it's kind of the latter portion of my career. And again, it's just there's so many talented people. So I think and especially, I've worked at three places my whole career. That's it. Newsday, the New York Daily News, and ESPN, three great places. I've been like the luckiest guy ever to have three great, and each place when you get to, you realize wow, there's so many talented people there. Like, I'm not the best person on this staff because so and so is better, but the competition is good. It keeps you on your toes, and you learn a lot from people like that, and you never stop learning.
So what advice would you give like reporters looking to make that jump from like a small what network or from college to a major network such as like ESPN or NFL, the NFL?
I think it's networking. I think that's a huge key. I think we're in a people business, we're in a relationship business, and I think you can never not know enough people, and I think keeping in touch with people, text now, in the old days before texting, you had to call people to keep in touch with them or write a letter. And now it's just so easy. So really, there's no excuse not to have a wide network of sources and colleagues because all it takes is a text. It takes you 5 seconds to
Hmm.
text someone a congratulatory, a happy birthday or a
Yeah.
congratulations. And so that would be my advice is just do as much networking as you can.
Okay, I love that. So you would be really big on LinkedIn, and so do you, as someone that's been in the industry this long, like would you say LinkedIn is a good like app or a good website that people this far up in your industry would look at someone that is a college graduate?
So I'm going to make a confession. I am on LinkedIn, but I don't really use it as a tool to network. The way I use it, to be quite honest, Tanisha, if I'm trying to track down someone,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a phone number for them, I'll try LinkedIn and send them a
Right.
message. And so it's really more of an investigative tool for me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
use it as a networking tool. I get all the requests to do the connections and everything like that, but it's not really what I use it for.
So more so networking, like word of mouth is like more memorable to like a person, especially like someone is busy and like as much with you have like as much with what you have going on now.
Yeah, word of mouth and texting and Facebook and just being at the events,
Yeah.
like going to events and meeting people and just trying, when I go to a football game, I always try to talk to the opposing media, like from the other city that comes into town, ask them how they're doing, like what restaurants they went to, what hotel they're staying at. And it's like a big fraternity, and like the sports writing fraternity,
Hmm.
it's it's a big business, but in some ways it's very small because people keep in touch. And so really just face to face,
Yeah.
a lot of face to face and building relationships that way.
Okay, yeah. So you've been covering the Jets for many years now. What do you think makes the franchise so unique?
Well, they're not going to want me to say this because they're kind of like, how could I explain this delicately? I mean, they've gone 58 years without going to a Super Bowl, and right now they've gone 15 straight years without making the playoffs. So
Right.
I think they're so interesting to cover because they're the underdogs all the time, and they've had this entire. It's almost like watching a car wreck. Like if you're driving by, you don't want to look at it, but out of natural tendency, you're going to stop and look. And that's kind of what the Jets are, unfortunately, right now. And people watch it. Like my stories on ESPN.com get amazing traffic, and people are like, "Why? The team is awful. Why?" But they're interesting. They're an
Hmm.
interesting, awful team, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so that's that's kind of the intrigue of the Jets right now.
I like that. So how do you, as the person that's moderating, how do you balance being critical while maintaining professional relationships?
Yeah, that is a great, great question. And we encounter that conflict every day.
Hmm.
You have to tell the truth. I mean, our job is to tell the truth. And when the team goes 3-14, like they did last year, you can't sugarcoat it. They were
Hmm.
terrible.
Yeah.
Even the games they won, they got lucky to win. So, you have to be honest and truthful. But you don't want to take cheap shots. You don't want to take gratuitous cheap shots at the people you cover because you have to face them the next day in the locker room, or you have to face them the next day in the press conference. So you want to be critical, but do it with supporting facts. And if you're going to be critical of the quarterback, let's say, make sure you explain why he's not performing well. Just don't say he throws like, a ninth grader. Just, say, look, his stats are this, this, and this. And that way you back it up with evidence and proof, and so that way you build relationships. It's harder for them to be upset with you if you give them facts.
Yeah. Obviously, you covered a lot of stories like since you've been doing the Jets. What is the most memorable story you've covered since you've started?
Well, that's another really good question. You came prepared. I it's you cover a team for 37 years. It's impossible to pick out just a couple of stories. They came so close to the Super Bowl a couple of times. I thought they were going to do it, and so those were interesting stories just to chart their journey to get to close to a Super Bowl. I covered a player, and this is a sad story, but a long time ago, they had a player who broke his neck in a football game and was temporarily paralyzed. And that's a terrible, terrible, tragic story. But it was one that was widely covered. And I thought I was at the forefront a lot of those stories because I knew the player very well. I had a good relationship with him. So I had a lot of stories that people didn't. So that was interesting. And, with the Jets, they're always changing coaches all the time. I was at the famous press conference where Bill Belichick, of course, the famous Patriots coach, he stepped to the podium. He was going to be introduced as the Jets coach. And instead of accepting the job in his press conference, he quit right on the spot in real time. And we were just sitting there with our jaws were down. We were like, what? What just happened? And this was before Twitter. If this was happening in social media, I mean, this would have been alive and in real time. But he quit on the spot in one of the most bizarre press conferences ever. And the Jets thought, well, this guy's a crazy coach. He's never going to amount to anything. Well, that coach goes on to win 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting to know. I'll keep
Yeah.
in mind of that. So,
Yeah.
so moving forward, for students who want to pursue in sports journalism, what skill do you think is like the most important today?
Yeah, I mean, the media, we know how much it's changed. I mean, it's the media has changed. I can't even tell you. People don't read newspapers anymore, and so years like 20 years ago, that's all we had were newspapers. Now it's changed, but a couple of things haven't changed, and they remain the same, and they're the pillars of our business. And that's you have to be able to write. I mean, no matter if you're posting on social media on X or Instagram, you're writing stories for the web, whatever platform you're on, even if you're writing for television, you need to be able to write clear, succinct English sentences. That's one thing. The other thing is reporting. People crave information in our business, no matter how much this business changes. Maybe 10, 20 years from now, people are going to be craving information, and that comes through good reporting and developing sources. So I would say those are the two things that I would encourage students to like be good at: writing and reporting.
Okay. And then could you, giving how, since you mentioned how fast moving sports media is today, what do you think truly separates like young journalists from who make it and then who don't?
Yeah, work ethic, just making that extra phone call, sending that extra text to someone to check on information, just going the extra yard is what I'm trying to say. And like some people will try to cut corners and say, well, I've got my story. I talked to the person at the press conference. I'm going to write my story. That'll be fine. The really industrious journalist, student journalist, will try to talk to some more people about the story, and they'll get more information that no one else has. So work ethic, I think, if I can't emphasize enough, is the key.
So get multiple sources and always follow up. Okay, so I
Always
like that.
follow up. You never know. I can't tell you how many times I made an extra text or an extra phone call, and it just led to an entirely different story, a better story.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, yeah. So always do that.
And then my last question before we close out is what is one professional habit that helped you most early on in your career?
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been asked of me before, so that's another good one. Professional habit. I was a nerdy kid. Like I
Mhm.
knew I wanted to be a writer, and so I wrote a lot. Like so, I think there's like with anything, it's like if you're a basketball player, the best way you got to practice, right? Or if you're a
Mhm.
golfer, you got to play golf. And so if you want to write, you have to write. So as a kid, I would watch on TV, I would watch games and cover them as if I were a writer, like a professional writer in a press box. But I was just sitting at my kitchen table
Right.
keeping score and then writing a story that
Hmm.
no one would read. I think maybe my parents read it. I'm not even sure they read it, but it helped me so much just over and over, like the repetitions over and over again. So that would be one professional habit that I would stress is just do what you do and do it a lot.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so Now let's close out with something really, really fun. If I was to look inside your game day bag, what are three things that you absolutely cannot cover without?
You mean you mean this bag that I take to games?
Yes, that exact bag.
Well, I go to every game with an ESPN microphone. Okay,
Okay.
you got to have that because a lot of times they ask us to do live TV hits right after the game. The other thing would be just obviously everyone has it, the iPhone because I just using it as a recorder, doing
Yeah.
interviews and speaking of modern, the transcription app on here has been a lifesaver. Recording, it automatically transcribes your interviews, which saves me a ton of time. So that would be two things. And then my third thing would be um, here's the NFL Black Book. This is a book with every phone number of every person in the NFL, like front office, reporters, TV stations. You can't leave home without that either. So those would be three things. And then probably a fourth thing would be batteries.
Okay.
Always bring extra batteries. You
Yes.
never know, we're going to need a battery. So,
Everyone has learned that lesson the hard way.
yes, we've all,
Yes.
I'll be like, hey, anybody got an extra battery?
Yes.
Uh, Bring your batteries.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, Rich. That was honestly a really great conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your advice and your experience, especially for those trying to follow in your footsteps. And I appreciate you giving me that advice about how to move in a fast-paced sports media area. So I really appreciate you for your time. Is there anything else you would like to say?
No, I appreciate your time, and obviously you came very well prepared because those were some really interesting questions. And I'm not just saying that because I teach a class at Syracuse University, so I get asked a lot of questions. But you had a couple that no one ever asked before, so
Oh,
so great work by you.
thank you so much.